Greetings everyone. Some holders of the Zimbabwe exemption permit have taken a decision that they will not be applying to move to other visas. At the expiry of the grace period, they will want to go back to Zimbabwe. So such individuals keep asking us on what they should do with their motor vehicles. In the previous videos, we did say you need to register with the Zimbabwe Embassy or Consulate that you will be a returning resident. You are not applying to remain in the Republic of South Africa. So if you have a motor vehicle and you want to return back to Zimbabwe, say by the end of the grace period as announced by the minister, or by the end of the extension as granted by the High Court, which of course we have discussed the appeal, you need to familiarize yourself with the Statutory Instrument 10 of 2022. We will go through it so that you will understand what in Statutory Instrument 10 of 22 means. So it talks about your motor vehicle, that you will be granted a waiver not to pay duty on your vehicle. So once again, talk of a waiver, because in most cases people, when we talk about waivers, it will be about applying for permits in South Africa. It says here suspension of duty on immigrants' vehicles. Statutory Instrument 10 of 2022 provides for a suspension of duty of immigrants' vehicles. An immigrant in this case is defined as any person who is a resident of Zimbabwe and enters Zimbabwe on return after having resided outside Zimbabwe for a period of not less than 2 years, or any shorter period as may be approved by the minister. Under Statutory Instrument 10 of 2022, customs duty and tax is suspended. Only VAT is payable at a rate of 15% on importation of a motor vehicle by an immigrant. Requirements for qualification of the motor vehicles for suspension of duties are: 1. The motor vehicle should be shown to the satisfaction of the commissioner to have been owned by such immigrant at least 6 months before the time of his or her arrival and at the time of their importation. I know some who are not on Zimbabwe exemption permits, or any permit for that matter, are now trying to get those holders of Zimbabwe exemption permits that are not renewing to say, why don't you pay duty for my vehicle? So you need to understand this, otherwise you are going to run into problems. It says the motor vehicle should be shown to the satisfaction of the commissioner to have been owned by such immigrant at least 6 months before the time of his or her arrival and that at the time of their importation. 2, the vehicle should have an import value that is not in excess of $40,000. I'm not sure how much is $40,000 in rand, so you can do the calculations. If the value exceeds this amount, full duty is payable on the excess amount. So what it basically means, you do not pay for a duty on a vehicle which is worth $40,000. But if you buy a vehicle, or if your vehicle is worth $50,000, so you only pay duty for the extra, on the extra $10,000. And as it go up, you pay for that, the excess, you pay duty on the excess. But if it is $40,000, you do not pay duty. As I've said, I'm not sure how much it is in rands. Conditions on vehicle cleared under immigrant suspension. The immigrant shall not sell or dispose of any manner or display for sale the vehicle in respect of which such suspension was granted within 24 months after the date of being granted such. Let me read again. The immigrant shall not sell or dispose of in any manner or display for sale the vehicle in respect of which such suspension was granted within 24 months after the date of being granted such rebate, unless written permission is granted by the Commissioner. The duty which would have been payable at the time of granting the suspension is paid. So, assuming you are one of those that no longer want to move to other visas, you own a motor vehicle, you take your motor vehicle to Zimbabwe, you apply for the waiver that you do not pay for the duty, but you are en route to the UK or to Europe. If you do that, you will have violated the condition of suspension. You need to remain in the country for the next 24 months unless you get a permission which should be granted by the Commissioner. And then any immigrant to whom a suspension of duty has been granted shall, for a period of 2 years after the granting of the suspension, notify the Commissioner of any change of their residential address within 14 days of the date of such change, and report to the nearest customs office once every 12 months during the period of the suspension, failure of which the full duty waived at the time of importation shall come due and payable. So if you said you stay house number 15 in Lobengula West, if you change to go and stay in Emakhandeni, you need to notify the Commissioner of your change of address. 3, an immigrant who has been granted a suspension of duty, who emigrates or departs from Zimbabwe for a period of more than 6 months within 24 months from the date the suspension was granted, shall remove the goods from Zimbabwe on his departure unless prior written permission is granted by the Commissioner to lease the effects in Zimbabwe. The duty which would have been payable at the time of granting the suspension is paid. So you do not leave Zimbabwe for a period of more than 6 months. If you do, you have to remove the motor vehicle or you pay the duty which was waived. So if you take your vehicle to Zimbabwe, you are granted a waiver for 24 months that you do not pay duty. It does not mean you cannot cross to Messina to buy your groceries just for a weekend, or go to Botswana for your groceries, or even to Zambia. But what is not needed is that, or what is prohibited is that you leave Zimbabwe for more than 6 months. If you do, that duty which was waived will come into effect. You need to pay full amount of the duty. Of course, you know, if you then fail to pay full amount of the duty, then the state will confiscate your vehicle. Please write your comments in the comment section. I am Mabuto Nicholas Mabena. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you are on TikTok, please follow us. Otherwise, have a great day.